Still alive. Unlike a certain queen that we know. We'll be here. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. So I checked all the register, the historical facts, and I was shocked into shame to discover how I'm the 18th pair of descendant of someone. What's up? Oh, has the world changed and we've all changed? Oh, has the world changed and we've all changed? The lyrics to this are pretty good. Shit. So I broke into the palace with a sponge and a rusty spanner. She said, I know you cannot sing. I said, there's nothing you should bring me, play piano. We can go for a walk where it's quiet and dry and talk about precious things. But when you're tired, you know it's sacred. No one talks about frustration. We can go for a walk where it's quiet and dry and talk about precious things. Like love and law and poverty. Apple juice. We can go for a walk where it's quiet and dry and talk about precious things. But the rain never flattens my hair. Your body, and the church will snatch your money. The queen is dead, boy. The sun of the other. The death that breaks your body, and the church all I want is your money. The queen is dead, boy. And the sun of the other. Life is very long when you're lonely. Life is very long when you're lonely. Hey, y'all. Thought we'd open up with a little Smiths. The Queen is Dead. Back from the days of the dead when I was a DJ. I am what I play. I think one of the lines in there is that the singer is related by blood. He found out to the Queen. Because we're all related. So that's what is very important. Welcome to the Jack Blood Show Deadline Live TV podcast. My fellow thought criminals, enemies of the state, feral humans, wherever you might be, and sovereigns, if you're out there. Some of the royals are watching this broadcast today. What is he going to say?
Is it possible that we will have to delete this channel and flush down the toilet? Maybe, possibly, because I have some info. So we're gonna do all that. A lot of weird things happening all at once, and it's hard to keep track of it. That's kind of where we're at, right? That's what we try to do here is put things in a priority sector. But yeah, I mean, things coming so fast, and then of course, meanwhile, you're trying to deal with inflation and put food on your family and all the rest of it. Speaking of families, mine is back. Thank you guys for helping me do that. The family is back in the house. That's why I took a couple of days off. We're trying to get accustomed to all of this and be organized. And, it's just, it is what it is. I'm quite happy about it. But thank you very much, you guys, for helping me make that happen. And families, despite what some people think, families should be together. And we are. So that's pretty cool. And I'll bring them on once we're all ready. We'll start a new podcast. Jack Blood and his wife will be Tony Ray, as you guys know her. So, as you guys know, the Queen is dead. Short live the prince, or the king. Charles III, as he's known. Yeah. They are the sovereigns. They call themselves sovereigns. You're not really sovereign. You are a subject. You are a subject. They are the sovereigns. And for those of you who are kind of in the sovereign movement and whatnot, you probably might have a bone to pick with that. They also are born, the royals, who are all related, coming through Rome, through Charlemagne, through Germany. They are related and interbred. The House of Windsor, they changed their name because there was, after World War I or before, and, during all of that noise, they were suffering some very extreme anti-German racism. So they changed their name from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to the Windsors. That's not their real name. But they are part of the House of Orange, which is, if you get into the bloodlines of Charlemagne, they littered Europe with their progeny. So Queen Beatrix, all the usual suspect. This is why I think the one thing I might have put on my Facebook was Brits out of Ireland, chase out the reptiles. That's why to this day now, if you look at the Irish flag, it's got orange in it. It represents the House of Orange, who rule over Ireland. We'll get into some of that on this podcast, the Commonwealth, what this means to the Commonwealth. The bloodline of the Queen and the Windsors and this royal family, the War of the Roses, where it went from Tudor to Windsor, and okay, we won't go over all that history, but it's worth looking into if you didn't already. It's kind of interesting. But there was a civil war in England, and this wing of the family, which has been proven to be illegitimate. If you look at the info that's out there, they'll tell you that their bloodline goes back over 1,208 years, I think. So over 1,200 years, they can trace their bloodline back to the royals. Do you want to get in on this? Speaking of bloodlines, I have my doggy here. Hey, wait, Doe. Come on. Say hi to the people. Come on. Up. See this right here? Can you see this? Look what a good doggy. I'm the queen around here. Okay. You go play. Daddy's working. Go play. This is how it is. Very professional broadcast we do here. That's why so many people love it. It's no. Part of the thing about the Queen, first of all, I just question if she died the day she died, because they rig things to land on certain dates. They're very occultist, the Queen Lizard family. And so I'm not sure the significance of the day 9822. Maybe you guys can wire in on the chat. You know that. I guess that's the official date, though. In some, because the sun never sets on the British Empire. I guess if you started keeping track of the time when it was announced, the afternoon, allegedly, British time, 9822, that would be 9922, where the sun initially starts to set on the British Empire. And I would assume that they're counting that, because they don't, to them, Greenwich Mean Witch Time or whatever, GMT, that's not where they live. They live all over the world. Their domain, their empire is worldwide. So wherever the first clock ticked and it became 9922 is probably where it is officially registered that Queen Elizabeth, my bad. I know English people are, the people who live in the Commonwealth are probably going to be pretty mad at me for some of the things I'm saying. I'm trying to be disrespectful. You know, we're good subjects, and she is the sovereign, and now King Charles III. I'm going to get to that in a minute. So we began, I just kind of look at it, and one of the myths I have to dispel is they're saying that the Queen is worth around $500 million. That's her personal wealth. It's jewels, it's land, it's artwork. And I'm sure that's a pretty crude estimate. So when you look at the Forbes richest people in the world, she's not going to register too much. But the Windsor family as a brand is worth anywhere from 28 to $88 billion. And that's just what people know. It's separated into a couple of different sections. One is the Duchies of Lancaster, which will go to King Chuck. He will now get that. By the way, if you were worried about this, the inheritance, the wills are all private. You'll never get to see the will of Queen Elizabeth. She has apparently left a certain chunk to the different sectors, but the main amount of money is in a trust, and that trust is called the Duchies of Lancaster. So Chuck gets that, and he had been controlling the Duchies of Cornwall, which will go to Prince Billy. Just, I don't know if you want to know. So what's interesting is, I mean, they are super invested into areas that sponsor war and some of the worst sectors. Oil is their favorite. Royal Dutch Shell. It's called Royal Dutch Shell because the House of Orange, along with the Windsors, were at one point, and back when we could track this kind of thing, were the main stockholders in Royal Dutch Shell. But they're also in Exxon and obviously British Petroleum, and then there's land everywhere, investments, and then you get into the VCs, the vulture capitalist organizations, the venture capital organizations. Some are called they're named after the family, called Windsor. You could invest in that. I mean, if you don't mind, it's like investing in Halliburton during the Iraq War. You can't have a conscience, and you probably shouldn't be able to sleep at night, but you probably make a good amount of money. I could easily start my own venture capitalist sector, and I can steer people into the things that I know are going to be big. When oil hit $22 a barrel, I mean, I told everyone, you buy oil futures. And it took a little longer than I thought it would, but you still, even with penalties, you still would have made out like a bandit if you knew that oil was going to go back up to 100 and something a barrel, which everyone knew. I got a little bit chastised for some of that. So they're in everything. And one of the things, because we just had the anniversary of 9/11, the 21st anniversary, 9/11 is old enough to drink and it needs it. Can legally drink now in the United States because you need a drink to deal with the massive amounts of ignorance and cognitive dissonance. And we're going to get to that on this podcast. It's around 9/11. It used to be kind of fascinating and interesting, and now it's just kind of annoying. We learned to debunk the debunkers on a regular basis, which if I had done a show this Thursday, we had to call that in or done a podcast until now, that's where I would have spent the majority of my time. I'd get to that, but there's an interesting connection because the Royals, of course, were in the BCCI banking. Look that up if you don't know what it is. Banks of Crooks and Criminals International. It's Bank of Credit. It was an international settlements west where dirty money could be laundered. And they were investors into that, and everybody made out. And John Kerry, Skull and Bones John Kerry, was heading the commission to look into, investigate what happened at BCCI. And it was the Bushes and Bin Ladens. But a lot of those people ended up moving their money over to the Carlyle Group. You guys remember back, if you remember back in the day, the Carlyle Group, right? No? Okay. Well, if you didn't know, Jerry Powell, who's the head of the Fed right now, the head of the Federal Reserve, who was appointed by then President Donald Trump, was the president of the Carlyle Group. He runs the Federal Reserve now, which isn't federal and has no reserves. But some of the investors into that, and this was pretty controversial post 9/11, and some of this we found out and did endless. I mean, there's just endless books and videos about all of this. Please, you can go look into it for yourself and trust yourself and believe what makes the most sense. But it means that the Windsor's trust fund, which we estimate at, if they say 88 billion, it's much more than that. They were invested into the Carlyle Group. And they invest. And now, of course, the way things work, you don't get to know who. There's something called stockholder privacy. So you don't get to know who's. You used to know. The Rockefellers own the airlines. They own all pharmaceuticals. They own oil. They own almost 90% of the stock. They owned it. And you used to know that, like going back to the 70s and 80s. But then they passed this kind of stockholder secrecy, where now you're not really sure. If you really did some deep dive investigating and had the powers invested into some kind of a serious legal investigation and could subpoena people and get them on the record and then hold them accountable for perjury and all the rest, you could start finding this stuff out. Apparently, Lizard Warren and the other Bernie Sanders, the other people that want to hold the rich accountable, don't seem to ever really want to push for this. Even the Stock Act under Lord Cousin Barry Obama, he's cousins with the Queen, is just was a gift to those who do insider trading, which would bring us, I guess, perfectly to 9/11. One thing, let me just talk about King Chuck, Upchuck. Can we call him? Can we just he was upchucked from his daddy's loins. They are a family of extreme eugenicists. Some would even call them Nazis, not because they're from Germany, because they capitulated with the Nazis and Hitler and probably are in some way, shape, or form related to them. But it's all a little bloodline game. As you know, Prince Philip wrote a book, If I Were an Animal, and then spoke on this many times, and then had an organization called the World Wildlife Fund, which, protected their land from poachers. I mean, how little things change, right? Now it's an NGO, or it's a foundation by Prince Philip, which is King Chuck's the third, King Upchuck III. It's his daddy. That he would want to come back as a particularly deadly disease so he can kill off 90% of the planet. It's very, very, very concerned. And so my friend Joan Vion, if you guys have been listening to this show for a long time, and I loved her to death, and she was just an amazing woman, wrote a book called The Sustainable Prince. I'm going to go to 9/11 here in a second because it does weave in almost perfectly. So Joan was just a businesswoman who went to her first G7 meeting, now it's G8, and started hearing about all the sustainability and how there's too many people on the planet and how a world order would have to be created to supersede governments to manage and rule the world's resources. I know that would never happen, and if you watch the news, it's actually happening every day. That is the essence of everything that goes on geopolitically. Who controls the resources? Who's managing those resources? Who has a say in that? And it is extra-national. You as a nation, despite the fact I know you think you're very powerful here in the United States, you don't really have much of a say in any of that. This gets into Agenda 21 and Agenda 30. So Joan, who we lost to cancer back in the early 2000s, and she would come on my show maybe once a week. Joan Vion is her name. She also wrote books like When Central Banks Rule the World, UN Straitjacket. I know some of you watching this might be huge fans of the United Nations. If you knew what I knew about it, if you knew what George Orwell, not George Orwell, the other guy, my bad. If you knew what Aldous Huxley knew about the United Nations, and especially UNESCO, which is the education and health arm. I know health isn't that important because we just got out of a 2-year COVID lockdown where they did a great reset. That's probably not applicable at all. Said about his own brother, Julian, who was running the first UNESCO at the United Nations, that it was a full-on eugenics organization for education and for health. That's what UNESCO does at the United Nations, founded in 1945. And that he wrote in his book, and if you read Brave New World, it's fiction, but Brave New World Revisited is not fiction. It actually compares his book with the aforementioned George Orwell, talking about how we'd be drugged into submission, how we would learn to love our slavery. Okay, all of this. His brother Julian, his dad founded Darwinism, discovered Charles Darwin, their grandfather, sorry, not their dad. But this, passed down. This is how they knew like what was going on in Brave New World. So one brother went to take a lot of LSD and write Brave New World and Doors of Perception and a lot of the greatest literary works ever. And the other brother went to head the global eugenics program. So this all ties in. So Joan Vion saw that. We lost her, by the way, October 2010. She had a what I call fast-acting cancer. She was okay 1 year. The next year, they gave her months to live. I don't think that she would have put it that way, but she was a massive asset for us. I mean, I'd get her on the show. She would go to, World Economic Forum. She would go to UN meetings, and she would report back. One of the last things she talked about was under the Lord Cousin Barry Obama administration, how that there was a treasury blueprint that would be bailouts forever. Well, she was right. That was when she said that on my show. It was probably about 2009-ish, about a year before her death. She had found this treasury blueprint. I know I'm seriously digressing, but wait, it will all tie in. Watch. And that's exactly what we've seen. Because central banks run the world, that's exactly what we've seen is Bank of England works at the service of the sovereign, but is run by the Rothschilds. So it all goes hand in hand. That ever since the massive catastrophe, almost near total global economic meltdown and subprime meltdown, call it what you want, reorganization of all financial institutions, which is what it was, in 2007 and 2008, which both Bush and Obama sent bailout money. But you thought that was the end of it. No, I mean, this is probably the most underreported news story in the history of the world, in the history of this country, is that there have been massive bailouts ever since. Massive. Okay, at first it was $60 billion a month, free money to the discount window. Look that up if you don't know what it is. It's part of the Federal Reserve chain. That means the top 6 or 7 investment banks, they're not supposed to be both investment and lenders at the same time, but thanks to William Clinton, Rockefeller, they put the kibosh and all of that. It's gone up. It's just gone up significantly. And if you think you're a Trump supporter, good for you. It didn't go down. It actually went up. I mean, this errant, no interest, low, very low or no interest lending, and then fractional reserve lending, and what we know as what we've become a rule under these days with the central banks, really kicked off under Reagan and Thatcher, and then has just exceedingly snowballed ever since. But Joan came up with this treasury blueprint, and we did a huge show on it. It's since been massively flushed down the internet. But so some of the work that she did, she wrote a book called Sustainable Prince about the artist formerly known as Charles King Upchuck III. Explains how one world government is here now and how the countries that refuse to be part of it can be just taken out. So this is what we've seen. And this is part of gets us now closer to 9/11. It is the Project for a New American Century, that the United States and the West being the spear that heads that. Until September 1994, Joan Vion was just a businesswoman, as I just said. As a result of attending a United Nations conference on population and development in Cairo, Egypt, she received her wake-up call as she found there was more going on at the global level than most Americans knew, understood, or were being told. This book is now $4. You can buy it on Amazon. Last time I checked, a paperback. In her determination to understand the global level of what it really means for Americans, Joan covered 103, at last check, 103 she went to and covered UN and UN-related conference since that time in Cairo, which include economic, political, environmental, military, peacekeeping, legal, trade, financial. So she went to Group of 7 meetings, now 8. Group of 7 finance minister meetings, Group of 8 foreign minister meetings, International Organization for Security Commissions, the Rio Plus 5, which was the follow-up to the Earth Summit, World Economic Forum meetings. I would get her right when she came off of those. And everyone was covering Bilderberg, and I would be the dummy that would be, hey, let's cover what they were saying at the World Economic Forum. Now, everybody, that's all they cover. We were a little ahead of the curve. Free Trade Areas of the Americas meeting. That's the FTAA. Oh, you know what is NAFTA? See, FTAA goes all the way down the entire hemisphere. Of course, I've reported on this a million times. It removes any sovereignty, which this country has, which is only a protection against wider governing by less people who are less accountable. I would love it if we could all live in a Star Trek world where it's just one world and we're all working together and pulling together as a team. Yay! But unfortunately, that's exactly what the people that do business want to know. And that's what Joan uncovered, that she went to Bank for International Settlements meetings. Gorbachev, who, weird, we just lost right before the Queen. Gorbachev State of World Forums, various conferences, United Nations, International Criminal Court, Al Gore's first global conference on reinventing government, World Trade Organization meetings, and others. So she was credentialed through the USA Radio Network in Dallas. We were so, remember her? She was on Deary Brownfield show. You guys remember that show? Jeff Rentz, my show, others, Power Hour. She would constantly be on and ask questions or interviewed. She interviewed presidents and prime ministers, key United Nations, IMF, World Bank officials. I mean, she just had massive access and always told what was going on. And so Bank of England, international settlements, all of that, okay? Clinton, Bush administration, she just rolled through all of that. Multinational, transnational CEOs. I mean, she would sit down and interview them. Some of it's still out there, and it's amazing. I could have just, for this show, and now I'm talking about her so much, I could have just played her video, which is way better than what I'm doing. And for those of you who, are anti-misogynist, her organization was called the Women's International Media Group, right? For women who are smart and go out and take on men who run the world. UN Watch, she did that. So one of the books she wrote was Prince Charles, the Sustainable Prince. Let's go there. It's currently, I think, in its 5th or 6th printing. And it discusses her belief that when the U.S. Senate signed the UN Charter in 1945, remember they tried this with the League of Nations and that failed. We needed a whole nother, because the League of Nations failed and the Balfour Agreement, look into that, the Balfour Agreement failed after World War I, which was mainly why World War I happened. I hate to break it to you. When that failed to happen, when Israel failed to get its state, when the World Government Organization failed, League of Nations, they had to have a whole nother world war. And then it worked. And so we've been living with that ever since 1945. But she says that since that happened, America officially entered world government, reverted back to under British rule. So what you have to understand is, and then she talks about the UN, its role, Prince Charles, the sustainable development and public-private partnerships. I mean, he's been out pimping for Agenda 21, and now it's called Agenda 2030. They put a new deadline on it because 2021 they didn't make it. Good job. See, some of you guys know what the Council on Foreign Relations is, and this will even get us into 9/11 a little more because it's one of my notes. Last year, on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, the Council on Foreign Relations on their website put up a bunch of resources to debunk 9/11. Right? Okay, not right. Probably wrong. You hear? You hear, y'all? Okay, good. Let's use that one instead. Cecil Rhodes, who was the gold and diamond mine, and if you listen to the Queen is Dead song by the Smiths, it kind of references, the Boers, the Boer War, which took over Africa and gave the United Kingdom so many, and has set since then a massive war over resources in Africa. But Cecil Rhodes was the guy there that was in charge of all of that, and they brought back a lot of gold and diamonds, and they had to divide it up with the cousins, in the Dutch cousins, also people in the House of Orange. And when he died, when Cecil Rhodes died, I don't know if you guys have heard this before because I kind of grew up knowing this, but you take things for granted. When he died, he left his fortune to making sure that the British Empire would be world government, that they would run the world. And part of his money, obviously, you guys know about the Rhodes Scholarship, right? Bill Clinton, Rachel Madcow, others, that they go to Oxford, they're chosen, they go to Oxford, and they are indoctrinated into the end game, which is to creating a global government under the rule of the monarchs and then the subjects of the Commonwealth and of Great Britain. Yeah, I mean, it's staggering when you begin to get into this. So Cecil Rhodes, the first thing when he died, they put in his money into this organization called the Royal Institute for International Affairs. And that was meant to do propaganda and to get in and buy politicians and own foreign governments by infiltration all over the world. And this first spinoff of that, I believe, was it the first spinoff? I know that the Safari Club is a spinoff of that, which spawned Saddam Hussein in Iraq and other Middle East leaders, because that was how we carve up the map, is we want to decide who owns, the oil and who owns the resources. And that all happened after World War II, another major accomplishment. But the Council on Foreign Relations was a direct spinoff from Royal Institute of International Affairs, and they take their orders from them for the most part. Now, things have changed a little bit over the years. We have think tanks and there are NGOs and different organizations now, obviously, through the public-private partnership, multinational corporations, but all of them are kind of in the same system, which is borders create laws, laws create obstacles, competition is a sin. So technocrats, and it's interesting, if you guys ever saw the movie Zeitgeist, they were big 9/11 people at one point. Later on, Peter Joseph and the fellows over there at the Zeitgeist Industries decided to disavow some of that and got into this whole sustainable development, controlling all resources. What's his name? Jacques Franco. It was a bastardization of Bucky. That's just too much information. I know. I'm just spilling this. I'm just vomiting this out. I'm really sorry. You guys know what I'm talking about. Kilmeister. He's Lemmy's great-grandfather. It is a bastardization of futuristic thinking. Buckminster Fuller. Thank you. You didn't tell me that. I just remembered it. Bucky Fuller. So these guys, Jacques Franco and others, and Zeitgeist, and they got famous for doing great 9/11 work and then disavowed all of that. And then later what they've done is they've sucked you in to believing these technocrats, controlling all resources. You'll just do what you say. You own nothing, right? This is all part of the Great Reset, which it just, you could see it, its origins. You could see the roots of it starting to grow, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And it's bearing fruit. This is what we're getting in King Upchuck III. This is what he is, the sustainable prince. This is what we're getting. There is some argument now this is the woke era, right? So there is some argument that you guys conquered our nation in the past, and we're still a little upset about how you tortured and used corporal punishment and divide and rule, and how you plundered us, because basically the essence of the Commonwealth, and they still are in Australia, Canada, and various other places, is all your resources belong to us. All your resources are owned by England. That is the essence of the Commonwealth. And it still survives to this day. So what we're seeing in the media is they're saying, okay, well, people are very upset that you once conquered us and stole all our resources and ruined us as a people, turned us against each other, beat us, hung us, tortured us. But that's the great thing about Queen Liz is she let some of those things go, allegedly. But that brings us into covert colonization, which I've been talking about for years. I mean, you can't overtly colonize. It's like if you ever played the game Risk, you understand you only have so many pieces that can do your business and to protect your borders. So you have to be smarter about it. You have to be strategic about it. That's why the game of Risk takes literally 2 days to play, if not more. Same with Monopoly. That's how complex this stuff gets. Covert colonization, and not just covert colonization, because it's moved on from covert colonization of your country, of your people, of your region, of your continent, but covert colonization of your mind. This is what it's come to. So King Upchuck III comes from all of this. So now it took me, could have said this a little faster than 30 minutes? Probably. But there was a lot of information in there. Stuff you guys can look up or check out, or a couple of book references. That's why we're here. Try to do it like that. So I don't see a very good future for the Commonwealth, for the British people, subjects of the British Empire. And it's weird. Just, what is it? A month ago, less than a month ago, the entire Boris Johnson regime had to abdicate. They had to resign due to corruption. Here in America, we're doing perp walks with Steve Bannon and anyone that was ever associated with Trump. Meanwhile, the same stuff that BLM is accused of basically stealing donations. No big deal. So, I mean, justice is selective. All laws are selectively enforced and political in nature. And that's the bottom level of it. And then above that, there are people that are sovereign bloodlines that are born, told their entire life that they have a divine right to rule. And that's everything that they've ever known about themselves, that they have more money than they'll ever be able to spend. So control, perversion, like whatever else, it becomes the order of the day. That's how you get your high, I guess, right? You can track almost everything. So I love how, the funeral is on 9/19. There are a bunch of procedures that have to happen with the Queen lying in state and all the different ceremonies, let's just call them what they are, different death ceremonies, death of a king, killing of a king, death of a king. These are some of the most significant, call them Illuminati if you want, ceremonies that happen. So every day there's going to be some occult deal that's going to go with the ending of the reign. I just love how English people, you're not allowed to, even John Lydon, all right, Johnny Rotten, as you might know him, even he's, tweeting out, oh, God bless the Queen, long live the King. Some of you think maybe Prince Billy, who now moves in, and as I say, he inherits. So once they move up, so when Charles moves up, Upchuck, when he moves up, then Billy moves up, and they take control of these trusts, which signifies them being the sovereign ruler, and then they will control just everything in their power. I guess we're done with that. Okay, so yesterday, I'm going to take your questions. Let me just see if people are asking questions. Yeah, you guys are making comments. $27 trillion. I'll just start there. No, I mean, nobody knows. What we do know is that the world's richest people, I mean, it's just a factoring in, you just use percentages and kind of carve things up, are in the near $500 trillion range, which is astronomical and more than the GDP of all the countries put together for the next 10 years, 20 years, depending. But then remember, they get the major cut of that. So that kind of money is just not, those kind of financial records are just not available. We're just not going to have that. Yeah, you can find Joan Vion stuff on YouTube. You can't find our interviews, I don't think, because I interviewed her like once a month for a couple of years. She would go to the World Economic Forum and all these UN meetings and whatnot, sustainable development and whatnot, and Agenda 21 and everything. And then she'd come report back to me and tell me everything she found, and just did an amazing job doing it. To Viva Joan Vion, that's for you. I wish she was still here. I'm going to go through and answer your questions. I know we're running a little bit long. Where are we at? 45 minutes. I appreciate you guys being here. It's a pretty good crowd. Please make your comments and questions. Comments are fine. I'll read your comments. Questions are important. So I'm seeing some questions over here, right here. There. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. No. Okay. Yesterday was the 21st anniversary of 9/11. So I got to just do a little bit on that. And so we kind of melded the Queen, current events into 9/11. One thing I didn't tell you is that Trump loved the Queen. Trump and all of his people, they love royalty. They love the Queen. I'm sure if you saw, he doesn't Twitter anymore or whatever he does, I'm sure you would read some very sad eulogy that he wrote and talked about how we got to meet the Queen and she was very nice to him. She was great. She was the greatest ever. I mean, the guy is clueless. I mean, that's why. That's why. You guys like him. That's great. Maybe he is, what you say is, but he's clueless. Freaking clueless. His whole idea of 9/11 is that the Saudis did it, and that's a certain gatekeeping, I mean, we knew that then, that the Saudis were used and involved in it. By the way, look it up. They are one of the people that warned us. So there was prior warning. These are the legends of a false flag attack. This is the markers. This is how you got a false flag. There's prior knowledge, big time. I'm going to get into this. There's a stand down, big time. I'm going to get into it real quick. I'm going to try to fly through it. There's a cover up, big time. Even the 9/11 Commission said that some of the people from the Pentagon should be brought up on perjury charges, including Condoleezza Rice. Big time. And then who benefits? The same people that brought the problem and then the solution and created the reaction for the solution. That's what we know now. Now it's 21 years later and nobody knows anything anymore. All of it was flushed down the toilet and pretty much nobody remembers much of it, except for that a guy named Alex Jones said it. This is part of that Lord Cousin Barry Obama related to the Queen. This is sovereign. This is part of that. Not surprisingly, Trump, before he was president, also got in on the act, implying that Muslims in America were happy with September 11th. And I think a lot of people were kind of a little ticked off about that because there was another group of people who were also very happy about the attacks of 9/11 because it set forth the Project for a New American Century, the programs that so many people were in on, and it's a conspiracy of two people are involved in it. It's a legal term. Look it up. I mean, too conspiratorial to be too coincidental to be coincidental, and conspiracy. That is a real thing. It's a legal term. That's where it came from. So two people knew about 9/11, tried to warn America about it. Well, one of those was Israel, yes, and the other one was Saudi Arabia. I think they might have just been covering their asses. If this happens, don't blame us. We didn't do it, but we're very happy about it. It reminds me of the sinking of the Lusitania, which, as you guys know, kind of sparked World War II. Lusitania was a ship sailing right into where all the German subs were, knowing they were going to get shot down. They had a mark, they had the British flag up. They knew they would be a target. They knew they were going to get shot down. Literally, people on the Lusitania were going, I hope we get shot down, since that will get America into the war. Right? Very similar. September 11th. And so it's kind of like a Murder on the Orient Express. Have you guys ever read that? Can I give away the ending? Spoiler alert, if you haven't read it and you want to. All the different passengers on the Orient Express were suspects in the murder. It turned out they all did it. They all did it together. It was a conspiracy. When I had on Roger Stone and other people, and I was trying to break down, because so many 9/11 truthers were on the Trump train, pun intended, Murder on the Orient Express. And he would say stuff like there was a bomb on the plane and that's how the buildings went down, doing some very minor gatekeeping, because I just don't think he invests himself into the literature that much. He doesn't know what you guys know. And then he blamed it on Saudi Arabia, Muslims, which made it easier. But later, went and made buddies with all those guys. So apparently it didn't matter. The 28 pages, if you've seen what's available that's unredacted, is not very interesting. And even if it was, there was a regime change actually under Trump right around the same time in Saudi Arabia, which would mean that anything that had happened before that is kind of water under the bridge. Give us your money, we'll give you weapons. So is it a dubious assertion? Yes, it is. I mean, it's a straw man, which signals that there were hijackers on the planes, and they were from whatever, 14 of the 19 were from Saudi Arabia. Okay. Man, I feel like I could do 5 hours on this from what I know and all the people I've interviewed. But let's just kind of break down what they consider the big ones. Okay. So as I mentioned, the Council on Foreign Relations last year on the 20th anniversary did a huge breakdown on this. Okay. So talking about prior knowledge, people were wiring us all over the world saying, hey, they're going to, and this is where Condoleezza Rice got in trouble. Hey, we're going to use airplanes to attack buildings. They knew that. I mean, but this is such a joke, because they knew they were harboring some of these alleged hijackers who were just Lee Harvey Oswald's leaving a paper trail, breadcrumbs, and creating this myth. You can look up into one of the stories I did where in Oklahoma City, some of the hijackers were using government credit cards, which were canceled, but still went through. And there were eyewitnesses there that not only saw them before, but after 9/11. But whatever. Insider traders knew about the attacks before they happened. That did happen. Now, somebody got really... So it's Occam's razor. Let's apply Occam's razor to all of this. That is, if barring any significant factual scientific proof that is indisputable, the simplest answer tends to be true. So all of the luck that had to go into 9/11, coincidence theories as they've been called. God, how am I going to get through this? And I really want to wrap this up at some point, but okay. So let's just bang it out. Insider traders knew about the attacks before they happened. It's, again, the coincidence theories on all this. By the way, at the end, the investigators realized that insider trading had happened and that Osama bin Laden was the suspect. They don't actually even have proof that Osama bin Laden was behind 9/11, and that's why he was, and I interviewed the FBI on this, that's why he was never on the most wanted list for his crimes of 9/11. He was on for the attack on the Cole, remember the USS Cole? That was also a false flag, other stuff, but never for 9/11. Because they actually had no evidence of it. And the guy that I interviewed at the FBI was their spokesperson at the time. I think I was one of two people that interviewed him. It was a big story back in the day. I didn't get credit for it. I think I might have got there first, but who knows? They just didn't have any evidence. So it wasn't Buzzy Krongard, who was a former CIA he wasn't the head. He was the top, one of the top guys, number 2 at CIA, etc. It wasn't all of those guys. It wasn't your usual suspects, and in the American sovereignty, the American kings and queens that did all that, and that had information about that did put options on United Airlines and American Airlines stock, the same airlines that were attacked during 9/11. But it went beyond that. So the SEC, which I think at the time might have been actually run by Bernie Madoff. I'll have to double check on that. They did the investigation and found that it was probably Osama bin Laden who sent Buzzy Krongard from the CIA and his friends over to profit off of what was going to happen later. 9/11 hadn't happened yet. Again, prior knowledge. The air defense was told to stand down. And I'm just looking at this website, which throws everything out whole-handedly, doesn't add any information, just so that you can go find these conspiracies and just immediately shoot them down. So did NORAD stand down in the event that airplane is hijacked? The North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, is prepared to send out fighter jets, which can debilitate or shoot down an aircraft. On 9/11, 2001, NORAD generals said they learned of the hijackings in time to scramble fighter jets. Some skeptics believe that NORAD command defenses system stood down. You skeptics out there, they stood down because of their lack of presence during the attacks. Well, twofold. This is what happened. This is what happened on 9/11. This goes very deep. I'll try to do this as fast as possible. They say this is an excuse. Again, it would work for some people, and I'm surprised they didn't add it here, that at that time, the NORAD response to enemy attacks was antiquated, and they all went out to the Atlantic Ocean to wait for an attack from Russia. That's their first excuse, okay? When that first happened. Not long after Congressman Cynthia McKinney grilled Myers and Rumsfeld in front of the American people, and that went viral, there had to be a better excuse than that, which you can find in the very conspiratorial right-wing publication called Vanity Fair, which is neither of those things, but whatever you need to make it all add up and work. They printed the NORAD tapes. On the tapes, they found out that because of the 19 or more drills that were going on to replicate exactly what was going to happen at the exact same time on 9/11, that they were very confused. And there is tape of people at NORAD saying, this is the drill, right? Or is this live? So that's what happened. Again, Occam's razor. If the 19 hijackers, guys running this from a cave in Afghanistan somewhere, did this, how did they know that the drills would completely enable them to just run free with airplanes, which, by the way, none of them had transponders on it. Let's remember that one. They did have, because I did interview Joint Chiefs of Staff, who was head of the Gulf War air campaign. His name just escapes me for a second, but I did that interview on Media Row, and he admitted that at that point we had complete capability to remote control airplanes planes anywhere. And now, of course, we have drones, so it's not hard to figure that out. So in this, there's not really a stand down. Skeptics believe that they were in on the conspiracy. No, it's compartmentalized. They're not in on the conspiracy. They had to be duped with a drill. Or in this case, 19 or more of the drills. Amalgam Virgo. I mean, you can look into this and you can check out the NORAD tapes to find that out. Planes didn't make the Twin Towers collapse. Bombs did. These are the outstanding questions of just recently. And people are still asking these questions, thankfully, hopefully, that the World Trade Center collapse appeared to be similar to a controlled demolition. You could just watch Dan Rather on the nightly news. It looks like a controlled demolition, he said, especially Building 7. What's that? I don't know. Look it up. That the towers were in fact blown down and explosive placed in selected locations. There was a shutdown. I've interviewed people that worked in the World Trade Center towers. There was a shutdown a week or two before 9/11 happened. Whether that stuff is built into the building or not, you can argue that point, but there was a shutdown. I've interviewed, of course, William Rodriguez, who was the hero janitor of the towers, head janitor or whatever, maintenance in the towers. There were suspicious people running around, and the suspicious people, this story kind of got a little bit buried, looked like Muslims. So again, leave some more breadcrumb trails, because if you ever got caught that you wired those buildings, you can always go back and say the people that did come in look suspiciously Muslim. So that's like a cost-benefit analysis. That's a massive fallback plan. Witnesses, of course, including all the first responders, recount to hearing explosions all inside the building as they attempted to escape. And of course, this because no building has collapsed before or since from anything like this, it's not physically possible. Of course, again, one of the other things that the architects and scientists maintain, that a plane's fuel, kerosene, basically jet fuel, cannot produce enough heat to melt steel frames, and that the buildings wouldn't have collapsed from that. And if they collapsed, I think on a physics level, they wouldn't just go straight down, they'd fall over, and that would mess up a lot of things in lower Manhattan. That could cause a lot of damage. The Pentagon attack was scientifically doesn't hold up. This, of course, means the small hole with the large airplane, the pentalon, where there was really no debris or burning or anything. The massive expertise it would take for Dumb and Dumber, some guy who just learned to fly a plane and not to land, to make maneuvers that are almost impossible, that are impossible with a jet of that size. And then, of course, the lack of video footage of it. And this actual site I'm on right now, even they just don't know. It's why the plane impacted on the section of the Pentagon that was vacant due to renovations. April Gallup, look up her. She worked in the Pentagon that day we interviewed her. So it's just totally different. They got a warning before it was coming in. Then you get into Dick Cheney running the entire operation from the bunker. Norman Mineta, who was then at that time is a transportation secretary. He was a secretary of the United States of America, and he was the head of the transportation. And he had a guy down there, and this is the stuff I know. Sorry, I just know too much. And this guy asked Dick Cheney, hey, they're tracking the flight coming into the Pentagon, allegedly, the alleged flight, because there's no evidence that a plane hit it. I interviewed the pilot's sister. I mean, I've been down this rabbit hole so many ways, and I just can't prove it. I tried to disprove myself, debunk myself, and it was very difficult. In fact, the more I found out, the harder it was. That the administrative assistant to Norman Mineta, head of transportation secretary, is in the bunker with Dick Cheney as the plane's coming in, and he tells them it's 5 miles out. It's 1 mile out. And they start. It's like 30 miles out. What should we do? Nothing. Have I told you any different? Dick Cheney, who's now the hero of the left. The plane is 10 miles out. What should we do? I gave you orders. I'll drink your blood. And then allegedly the plane hit. Whatever it was not Flight 77. Flight 93 was completely staged. That's one of them. Very difficult to understand. Now we're seeing in revisionist history that there was a Flight 93, that it was completely obliterated and shot down. Of course, involved in all of that, the passengers that took over the plane, the people who made cell phone calls from the plane, which at that time was not possible. We didn't have the technology to really do that. So it's debatable. It's skeptical. I mean, maybe they could have gotten through, maybe not. Why would the one kid call his mom and say, "Hi, Mom, it's Jack Blood, born on this certain day"? I'm like, it's just so fake. I did a pretty quantitative, I think, very thorough examination of those cell phone calls with G. Edward Griffin. Good luck finding that. Hijackers are still alive. Well, they weren't in the planes, and there's almost no proof that they were. How did their passports survive the explosion? The truth of it is, and you'll not hear this anywhere, you kids out there, that was a planted story. That, in fact, the passport from the lead hijacker of 9/11 didn't fall. No one did find it. And later on page B29 in the newspaper, probably the New York Times, admitted as such. That's fake. There were never any passports. The few versions of one of the hijackers getting on the plane through antiquated video cameras are highly suspect. None of them are on the manifest. And yes, I've talked to people that have seen them alive, not in Saudi Arabia with a similar name. Literally that very guy that's picture is plastered all over the news in the bar. That's a little disturbing. Jewish people knew the attack was going to happen. I covered that. Whether they knew or not, yes, 4,000 Jewish employees took off from work on September 11th. People did know. A lot of people knew not to go to work in the towers that day. People knew, whether they were Jewish or whatever. Probably doesn't matter. But they knew that this was the impetus. This was the Lusitania moment that they were waiting for. And of course, we saw what happened later. Black boxes found by search crew were kept secret. Now, this is really important because I've interviewed first responders who were digging in the rubble. Some of them, I hope, are still alive with us today because most of them got poisoned. They were told to find two things, the gold and the black boxes. They weren't looking for bodies and doing, memorial work that most Americans could cry in their soup about. No, they were looking for the black boxes and the gold. They found those things. I interviewed a first responder who was one of the first guys on the scene who found the first black box. Never seen those. Skeptics believe the tapes were not disclosed in order to support a secret scheme. Where are they? The Bin Laden tapes are fake, where he confesses to 9/11. I've seen a bunch of different sides of this. I'm convinced they're fake. He never admitted to doing 9/11. Aluminum planes can't penetrate steel structure of the World Trade Center tower. I mean, this is a matter of physics. A BB could. Cartoon planes, and this gets into holograms and all the rest of it. So this little story ends here. I'm sorry to bore you with it. 20 years after the attack, we may never know the entire story. It's 21 now. We will always remember the people we lost in that tragic day. This tragic day. Never forget. How are you guys doing? Are you not forgetting? I'm not forgetting. Peter Joseph. I'm not forgetting. Does Peter Joseph forgot? I'm not forgetting. I staked my life and my career on this shit, and I am not forgetting. This is what I've just done in the last hour and 9 minutes, besides talking about Queen Lizard and her offspring, is give you a very small, speaking of BBs, a very small area of my brain that is occupied with information that can prove 9/11 was an inside job. Now, I didn't mention the number one. This is the smoking gun, not the cover-up, not the prior knowledge, not the stand down, not who benefited, not all the people caught lying, because you can always find excuses for that. I think the number one thing, in my humble opinion, my fucking opinion, the number one smoking gun proof that 9/11 was an inside job was the first time they tried to take down those towers. I didn't finish my sentence. It was an FBI sting operation. They built the bomb. It's on tape. Ahmad Salam, their informant. Hey, I think this is a dumb idea. These guys are kind of stupid. Don't give them a real bomb. Well, they won't listen, says Agent Antisev at the FBI. They won't listen. I try to tell them. They just won't listen. They want a real bomb because it's going to be a better case for when these guys go in and bomb the World Trade Center Tower in 1993. We'll have a better case. And then, of course, if you remember what was happening, this is the Clinton years where everything was domestic terrorism. And then we had Waco, and then we had Oklahoma City. And so all this stuff ties in. I've done hundreds of hours of high-level interviews on this shit. This is a very small piece of what I can provide in a 1 hour and 11-minute show. What I want to do now is there's so much news. I need to do another podcast just for that. I'm just so happy you guys are with me today, and my family is with me thanks to you guys. But that's, 21 years on. We have people that vote and people that go in the military now and people that live their lives and are just like you. Thanks to, especially this last week, Mercury in retrograde. You guys buying any of that stuff? But I try not to, but it's been kind of hard. I'm surprised I'm even broadcasting. Just a constant myriad of issues that constantly keep you spinning around to fix stuff. And once you finally get around, it's like having a Jeep. I had a Jeep Cherokee once. Once you'd go around the whole engine and you'd fix everything. And by the time you got done fixing it, it'd start over again. And that thing, the first thing you fix would be bad. And then you just constantly are fixing stuff all the time, man. Quality. I had my water heater go out. I thought it went out, and it was a snafu, part of Mercury in retrograde, I'm sure. And I'm looking at this water heater. I'm going, it's 1981, man. This thing's been around, 40 years. It might have seen its better days. No, actually, that thing will go forever. The one that was made 10 years ago, forget it. That thing's FUBAR. It's called, you guys have the answer to this. It's obsolescence. It's intentional obsolescence, where they build things to break, so you keep buying them. These are the people that are telling us, about the environment and how we need to give up certain things and not have air conditioning in a heat wave or whatever it is, right? But this is the most super digressive show I've ever done. No, can't be. I've done some pretty good massive digressions and super rants. Building 7 can't drink. Yeah. Well, there is that was the first one. I was there to see it. Jimmy, I was there to see, I think you were there too, weren't you? That's the first one they had built. The Solomon Building was the technical name of Building 7. It's, if you get into Seal of Solomon, probably not. I don't know. Larry Silverstein owned it. He pulled it. At least that's what he said. And then that's, I guess, another smoking gun. Kind of. I don't know. What is it? The BBC and ABC News were reporting it fell while it was right over their shoulder. It hadn't actually fallen yet, so they had gotten word that it was going to fall, but it hadn't fallen yet. That's how incompetent they were at the time. No, Building 7 can't drink, but its offspring can. That's the point. It sprung right up. Whew, man, that was quick. It's just a couple of years, less than maybe two years. I don't know. By the 5th year anniversary, that thing was completely rebuilt. The towers were still a footprint, and they were still working on the fountains and the memorial part of it. You know, the Twin Towers, the Freedom Tower. It's a Freedom Tower right now. Feel free. This is where all the bankers hang out and have their offices. Steal money from old ladies. Steal their 401ks. Feel free. Yeah, I feel fucking free, man. Carlisle. But that's what I'm saying. Trump people, man. I mean, the Carlisle 9/11, Queen of England, all that. They're in charge of the Federal Reserve. I mean, that. Hi. California. Are you still here? If you guys aren't here, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. Because I always get to the comments at the end. You got to hang if you want. We're not allowed to have super chat on this because I am not allowed to be monetized because you guys don't watch enough of this. Literally, if you want to help me, just put on all my videos. You don't even have to watch them. Turn the sound down and just let them play. Because I'm 4,000 hours short. I'm qualified on every level to get monetized here, other than the stuff I say. But I'm so far away on watch hours, I'll probably never make it. So California walks. Hey, Jack, what do you know about gold being taken from the towers? Yeah, I did cover that. So later I covered it. Yeah, there was massive amounts of gold, which is the original Bitcoin. You know, Bitcoin can't be traced. It's cryptocurrency. You know, there's a thing called the dark web. The CIA doesn't know anything about it. Oh, man. I'm sorry. That's the laugh. That kind of laugh. When I hear things that are that absurd and I don't even want to answer that. Yes, gold is untraceable. It can be melted down. That's why it's down $200 from a month or two ago. It's the real crypto. Message redacted. No. They took everyone off the pile to get it. Yeah, I know. They were just throwing. There was some bones or whatever. Just throw that over there. What is this? Shit, that looks like a charred rib bone of one of the victims. Just throw it. Get the... No. Because the people I interviewed that were looking for the black boxes and the gold, they're horrified the whole time. But they were following orders, so... Deadline Live, yo. 3.0 humanity. Sustainable prints. I mean, that's what we have. So the history of Prince Upchuck III, King Upchuck III. It's not good. The UN hates you. You hate the UN? Well, we should stop the hate. I'm trying to figure out how to just scroll down here without Joan Vion. You guys are all like piling on about how great Joan Vion was. Peter Tosh, Buckingham Palace, super cool song. Hey, yeah, no. Cheddar, hot cheddar. Yeah, I know. I played the Smith song, The Queen is Dead, today. They were part of the Commonwealth. I went to a garage sale in this is Kevin B. Kevin Tom Brady. Viva. Wins again. The GOAT. Best player in football. I call him the GOAT. If you do everything right and you're the best in your class, you can have the trophy, the mantle of being called the GOAT or the sheep. Americans went to a garage sale. All right, Kevin. 1982. This is Kevin's story of how he went to the garage sale in 1982. By the way, I have a call-in number. I promise next time I'll use it again. I should have just used it. And that's where you found none dare call it a conspiracy. I know. And UN fearful master. Been going down the rabbit hole ever since. That's what Alex Jones says that inspired him. He was just moving along in his rich Dallas life when he found none dare call it a conspiracy. And it just changed his paradigm. Now he's in a new paradigm. Derivative unraveling. Yeah. Man, I've been predicting the non-event. You only have to pull the event, the 9/11, the major COVID, if things aren't going your way. Another way to label those, you call them a black swan, right? It used to happen every, 100 years or something. You need a black swan to just reset everything. And it can be traced back like 1,600 years. But it's the stuff you don't know. It's the events that you don't hear about, the things that don't happen, and the things that are done behind the scenes that are, derivative unraveling. They're creating, Jim, they're creating more derivatives every second. A lot of people talking about now for sale signs all over the place for houses, that the housing bubble is going to collapse. There will be a correction. Look at, again, you want to know what's happening. Look at the people getting out of housing and whatnot. I guess on a wholesale level, BlackRock and those guys are all in still. So the thing about property is the way they have it rigged is even if you get corrected out, if you're in the right market. I remember when I lived in Austin, Texas, there was no correction. Now in Phoenix, where I also lived once, there was a massive correction. If the subprime meltdown hit and the real estate bubble popped and you happen to be in Austin, Texas, and it was an up and coming city, you're fine. You made money that month. You didn't lose your money. You didn't go upside down or underwater for your investment. You need to know these things. Behold a pale horse. Yeah. Another great one. Well, this one's for Bill Cooper. They shot him on his lawn just after 9/11 because they couldn't have him out talking. Thing is, bailout money was paid back. Oh, yeah, that's what they say. They paid back. The airlines, they all paid First of all, that's not true. And secondly, if they did pay it back to the Treasury or the airlines or whoever they paid back this bailout money, they got it at almost zero interest to play with. Wouldn't that concern you? So even if you're right and all the bailout money was paid back, and I'm not talking about that bailout money from 14 years ago, I'm talking about the shit that they fucking are sending right now, this month. Bailout money. Bailouts forever. Treasury blueprint. Look it up. Bailouts forever. Timothy Geithner. Little Timmy Geithner. Head of the New York Fed, and then put in, you know who the $5, if you know who the head of the Treasury is now. A former head of the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen. Just keep it in the family. Yeah, that's what they say, is the bailout money was paid back. They also say that the Federal Reserve pays the Treasury and that all that money goes in, and they are federal and they have reserves, and that they also, the Federal Reserve controls inflation, and they say a lot of things. So, yeah, I'm going to need to see a little more evidence on that. I've actually looked at it, I promise you. I'm not just selectively talking to you here. I heard that claim many years ago that the bailout money was paid back, and some of it was, and ceremonial, and good. That's off the plate. That's people that support Obama, that was their big thing. Oh, well, he bailed them out, but they all paid it back. Yeah, look into that, because you're going to find that that's dubious at best. The entire amount was repaid. The activities of the program, including dividends, interest, and capital gains received, resulted in a net gain to the government of about $3 billion. I know. I'm just disputing that, Jim. I know where you're coming from. I get it. You're here to debunk me. The biggest part of the TARP was on the bank rescue, which invested $2.236 billion over 700 banks. Almost all those investments have been resolved, most resolving in profit for the government. Man, God, I don't know where you're getting that and why you would believe that. I just don't. So they do their loans. The discount window is a loan. When they give you guys 60, whatever the number is, $80 billion this month, you don't have to pay that back. It's zero interest. 0.5 point interest. The rest of us are not paying that interest. And with fractional reserve lending, they can lend it out 10 times, and predatory lenders can lend it out any way they want. So even if you're right, and I think it's very dubious, these reports that all this TARP money was paid back. The Bush TARP money wasn't paid back? What are you saying? The Obama TARP money was paid back, but the Bush money wasn't paid back? I'd love to see that political breakdown, because I guarantee you there is one. Yeah. It's bullshit. And even if it is, that's not the issue. Wouldn't you like to get a little loan, a little zero interest loan? I mean, even if that's true, it was a black swan, pure and simple. But I've looked into that pretty hard, and I definitely see the claims of it. Yeah, Jim is like Jim used to be one of our listeners. He's a major debunker now. He thinks I'm a right winger, Trumper or something. All right, I think we're almost done here. Good afternoon to you too. Cool. Planned obsolescence. Yeah, that's not true either. Jim will debunk that for you. That would be stupid. Why would they make something that would break and so you'd have to buy it again? That doesn't even make sense. He has a report on that. No, I'm just saying, and I'm not trying to be mean, man, but and thank you. Hey, I'm down with people being skeptical. I mean, I just feel like now I got to end this show because I got shit to do, but it's just like now I feel like I have to go in, and the next podcast I'll have to just spend all this time remembering and relearning all the stuff that I already did that show. I promise you I did that show. How TARP wasn't paid back. I mean, it's partially paid back, yeah. What if I loan you $30 billion, right, at no interest, and you pay me back $31 billion, and that month I give you another $30 billion? Where does that go? Did that get paid back? Of course. Do I want another $30 billion loan? Yeah, here's the money that you loaned me, and I paid it back. The airlines are not profitable. The trains are not profitable. The post office is not profitable, and if you take out Amazon. I mean, we have been gobbled up. We have been Pac-Maned whole cloth. And we knew that they were going to do it. And we even told people how it was going to happen. So I don't know, man. Look, there are people. Let me help you in your argument. There are people that say just keep it going the way it's going, and the U.S. is the world reserve currency, and we'll never run out of money, and just print as much money as you want, and loan it, and the money that's given to the top 6 bankers and Jamie Dimon and the gang, it'll all trickle down to you, and you'll have a job. And thankfully, and that's why we go kill people and steal their resources, so you can have electric cars, or if you don't have an electric car, you can have gas, or you can buy a diamond for your sweetheart on Valentine's Day, or you could have food, right? I mean, I have no faith in it. I might be overly skeptical. I have no faith in it, and I'm going to do that. For the guy that comes in and debunks me, I'm going to do that. And I didn't know you were going to bring that up. And I guess I should have, because I rant and I bring up so many different topics. I guess I know that somebody's going to challenge me on some of this shit. So, but it just makes sense. I'll loan you $20. You don't pay me back the $20, you don't get another loan. I'm not. You're my friend, so I'm not loaning you $20 with interest. Right? We're in the same club. So once you pay me back that $20, you can borrow $100. Give me a break, man. As Henry Ford once said, and I know I'm going to get in trouble quoting him, if the American people knew how the financial institutions work, there'd be a revolution by morning. All right, I need support. If you guys want to, again, I've been trying to sell this very limited edition T-shirts. If you guys want one, the days are running out. It's a couple more weeks, and I'll stop selling them. And then whatever number that is where we're going to end up. But I'm willing to send to sell like 10 more of these very limited edition Jack Blood Show T-shirts. They're super cool. It's a great artist, a cartoon of the elite spitting out their coffee while they listen to the show you guys are listening to right now, the Jack Blood Show. It's kind of cool. I don't know. I like them, but they're kind of eye-catching, and they'll be limited. You'll be one of 24 people that have them. I'm doing those for a $50 donation. jackblood@hotmail.com. You can buy me a beer. If you don't want to buy a T-shirt or whatever, you can buy me a beer. I can always use one. Monday Night Football. I'm actually missing the hour of that. It's in my town. It's literally 14 blocks away from me right now, Monday Night Football. We take PayPal or Zelle there. So if you just want to kick in $10 or something and throw a little karma our way, really appreciate it. We'll do everything we can to keep coming with you and to book killer guests and to bring people in and to, I guess, disseminate information that is rarely heard and sometimes countered. So we'll do that. And then like anything, if you guys have a major problem with what I'm saying, look, I'll come with it. I'll come with it because I'm pretty confident that what I'm saying is true, but I'll come with it and not use a semantical argument either. When you're right, you're right. I'll admit it. If I'm wrong, I will absolutely admit it. jackblood@hotmail.com. You could just write, and we're going to be doing a mailing list here in the next month or so too. If you want to get on that, I'm not going to bug you constantly with it. It'll maybe be a once a month thing because it's a lot of work. So I'll probably do that. Some notes and attachments to the videos if you missed them, et cetera, ways to look for things. A little hashtag for people I think that are doing good work. It won't be like a newsletter you normally get. So if you want to just write me at jackblood@hotmail.com and say, hey, what's up? I heard the show. I heard the podcast. We'll put you not on that list, but we'll put you in the club. Let's just call it that. And if you want one of the rare T-shirts, like I said, there's maybe 10 left. $50 donation. You got that. And make sure to include your mailing address and what size you want. Why I'm pre-selling them. I want to make sure I have the right sizes because I've definitely screwed that up in the past. So I think that pretty much, here's my notes. Occam's Razor, CFR.com, debunking Cass Sunstein. I didn't mention how he made all conspiracy theorists look completely stupid. I did mention how Donald Trump is the greatest psyop ever and made us all look stupid. Who Killed John O'Neill film. Check that out. It's a fictional film. It's a great film. Most of the information in there is real, but it's set in a fictional level. Follow the money, right? We're talking about insider trading and all that kind of stuff and who John O'Neill was. Follow that money. And Trump loved Liz. So Trump loved him some Queen Lizard. He is modern royalty. With that, I'm out. You guys, thank you so much for being with me. I'll see you next time. Until then, I'm Jack Blood, your radio gun, saying be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid and shine bright, you crazy diamonds.